Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Before we dive into the content, let me cover a few housekeeping items. So first, at the bottom of your screen are multiple application engagement tools that you can use. Please note that all those engagement tools are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. You can also expand your presentation area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you happen to have any audio or video issues, you can find answers to some common technical issues located in the help widget at the bottom of your screen. Please note that we have a resource list available on the side of the presentation area, where you can find a copy of today's slide deck and additional help materials. So have a look and download everything that you may find useful. Lastly, please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent via the email that you registered with. And lastly, if you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We'll have a short Q&A session at the end where we'll select some questions coming from the audience, but we're also here to answer you one-on-one via the chat. So don't be shy and don't hesitate to reach out. And in case we run out of time or we didn't manage to answer your question, we'll make sure to follow up later by email. And after this quick introduction, let me introduce you to our speakers. So today the webinar will be co-hosted by subject matter experts from both Jama Software and OpsHub. So from Jama Software, we'll have Jeremy Johnson. Jeremy is VP of Product Management at Jama. He oversees Jama's product strategy and roadmap, as well as product design and user experience. He has over 15 experience in leading enterprise product management teams. And throughout that time, he has worked with customers in various industries. That includes automotive, semiconductor, aerospace defense, medical devices, industrial manufacturing, and consumer goods, consumer products, sorry. On the OpsHub side, we will have Paul Culling. Paul is VP of Alliances at OpsHub, and he and his team work closely to support Jama Software as a strategic partner and their end customer integration needs. Paul has spent the past 15 years of his career in various leadership positions within the ALM and DevOps space at companies delivering both tooling and digital transformation services. And lastly, we will also have Aparna Garg. Aparna is a senior product owner at OpsHub. She has been with OpsHub for 12 years and has held several senior roles within product engineering and product management. Aparna's expertise lies in integration architecture, product design, and customer management. So then now that you know a little bit more about our speakers, I'm gonna hand it over to Paul, who will walk you through today's agenda.
Thanks, Marie. Yeah, just before we get to the agenda, we'll talk a little bit about Jama and OpsHub. So on your screen, you'll see some descriptions about the two companies, but really OpsHub and Jama have built a deep and strategic partnership over the past 5 years, working together to help drive value for customers looking to integrate sort of the best of breed federated tool chains. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Jama and OpsHub work really closely from product management, sales, and customer support perspective. So for the agenda, today's webinar will focus on the integration of multi-tool environments. We'll touch on modern best-of-breed tool chains that are so common throughout software development organizations. We'll speak about the challenges of manual integration and how manual or multiple point-to-point integrations really aren't that viable as a long-term solution. We'll talk about the value of utilizing an integration platform to provide a scalable and extendable integration solution that can adapt to changing tool environment, or even how those tools are used within your organization. We'll then speak about some things you should think about when designing your integration strategy and how you can use that integration strategy to optimize your value stream from ideation through the delivery of value to your end customers. We'll finish off the webinar with a demo of Jama Connect integrated with multiple tools, including Jira, Azure DevOps, and Microfocus ALM. Jeremy?
Thanks, Paul. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a view here of today's multi-tool IT landscape. and kind of what that typically is comprised of in the product development sphere. Typically, what we see today are multiple best-of-breed tools. A lot of organizations have specific teams with a very specific objective. Might be dedicated and very specific, very bespoke testing solutions for different teams, different risk management solutions, and things that really need to be tailored to make sure that the organization is unlocking value. And so we see this a lot in most organizations, that they're really looking at best of breed tools, not a broad suite that's comprised in a huge monolith, to make sure that the organizations tend to be fairly agile and fairly quick to respond based on the specific role in the value stream. What that does tend to lead to, though, is data can get locked in silos across those tools. When you have teams working in these bespoke and very specific best of breed tools, that data can be siloed, can be difficult to share that information, and so you get fragmented value streams. These different roles across the organization that are adding value to the product development efforts. Those roles and those functions and those work streams can become highly fragmented. What we also see is a tendency for organizations more and more to shrink release cycles. Organizations are trying to be as agile as possible, trying to move quickly, trying to get product to market, trying to innovate as quickly as possible. And so we tend to see that shrinking release cycles, shrinking the development process to try to get products to market as quickly as possible. And we'll talk about some of the ramifications of that here in a moment. What we're also seeing, of course, is a continued reliance on remote or distributed teams across geographies. The product development world, the world in its entirety, has really gone through a transformation over the last 15, 18 months here. And even though we're seeing more organizations start to pull their folks back into an office setting, at least in part, we still have organizations, of course, that have global teams, have teams that are performing different functions, different parts of the value stream. And so keeping those folks connected is continuing to be extremely important. And of course, we foresee that to be an ongoing concern in the future. So when we think about this, this accelerated delivery cadence, it really demands a very dynamic and responsive ecosystem. When you have lack of visibility, when you have data that's potentially locked up in these different silos across the organization, you have a lack of broad visibility. You have a challenge with collaboration. You're not getting the best input. You're not getting the best insight from all of the teams, from all of the data that you have in your team. And when you have to actively source that information, when you have to actively put energy into collaboration rather than putting it in as part of the core system that you work within, it really, really does impact productivity significantly. The next impact, of course, is poor traceability. So when you have this disparate data, you're trying to move quickly, you may have gaps in traceability. You may have gaps in connecting requirements to test risk information. Your cost for managing governance, managing compliance goes up if you're having to fill that information maybe on the back end of the process rather than maintaining that connectivity, making sure that the verification and validation process is sound throughout the development lifecycle. And that also introduced quite a bit of risk. If you're doing a lot of that work at the back end, that's a tremendous amount of risk of things being missed, things going too far down the development cycle before they can be corrected. and that definitely leads to a lot of risk.